I hear people often bring this up around voice and around video. And I know that you recently did a session and had Morgan Freeman join you in on this conversation. Although it wasn't Morgan Freeman, it was a deep fake of Morgan Freeman. What are the potential problems or pitfalls that we need to consider as financial brand leaders when it comes to AI and large language models that could be an impediment to future growth?
Sure. So I would say there are two really big ones, and it's more challenges to implementation, and challenges to getting realizing the value that you hope to realize out of them. Um, One is kind of the classic shiny object syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is uh, there's all this hype, we don't know what to buy. Let's just find a tool, do something, and even within that, there's a lot of choices around: do you build your own? Do you fine tune a model? So on and so forth. Um, but you don't want to have a solution in search of a problem. You should start again from your strategy, from your priorities, to understand what are we trying to do, what are the use cases that we're trying to solve for, and then what can we do to apply large language models or more traditional AI or traditional software solutions to tackle those. Right? It still needs to be based in your strategy and your prioritization for what you're doing. There are institutions. I recently read an article about um, Bloomberg. They're producing their own internal generative Bloomberg GPT
Mm.
basically and they started back in 2020, uh, and they didn't really have any particular use cases in mind for it. And they've learned a lot. And they're planning to invest even more in it. But it was a solution in search of a problem. So it's perhaps good for learning and for building the skills within your organization to give yourself that kind of challenge, but it's not as good for solving business problems, right? So start from what you're trying to do. That's been true for AI projects for decades and remains true. The other thing is data. So SRM tends to work with organizations mostly below the 10 billion in assets mark. And a lot of them, even the larger ones, tend to not have their data environments in order, right? They have data in a bunch of systems. They're not integrated. They don't talk to each other. They don't have a centralized data warehouse that they can query. They don't have trust in their answers to different questions they're asking. They aren't data-driven enterprises from a decision-making standpoint. Um, and so data is necessary for really any custom AI implementation you want to do. There are uses, there are plenty of tools that you can buy off the shelf that will provide a level of value. But if you are planning to do something that is using proprietary data that is customized to you, you're going to need the data to be able to train it,
Mm.
and you're going to need to have your technical environment set up in such a way that you can hook it into an automated flow, right? So there's some commercial off the shelf that you'll tend to have less configuration into, and there's a middle ground, right, with some of these where they have some built-in training either as part of the implementation or that you can do afterwards in a more business friendly way. But that still requires having your data together, right?
Mm.
And that's just something that I think most CTOs we talk to, it's on their list. They know that they need to be better at data, but without concrete sort of use cases to point to, or without like a CEO that really understands the value of data and really drives towards it, those initiatives seem to end up deprioritized fairly frequently. And if you're part of the I'm trying to remember the statistic, like 60 to 90% of institutions that think that AI is going to give you a competitive edge, or that AI is a really important area of investment for you, um, then you should really think about increasing the priority of those data initiatives,
It's
um, because that's going to be an important foundational piece to it.
That's a great point on two fronts. Data, yes, but also perspective at the C suite, at the C level, executive level, CEO, because that will help drive prioritization. The other point you made too about potential roadblocks and pitfalls is the shiny object, right now it is like, I think you mentioned as we started this conversation, it's like drinking from a fire hose, separating what is hype and then what is actual practical use case that can create value. But it does come back to what's the strategic objective, and tying that strategic objective back to account holder pain points or member pain points externally, or looking internally. Well, how can we be more efficient and free up our people's times to do more important work that leverages AI capabilities? As we start to wrap up, I want to get really practical here, and send someone away with, you know what? Yeah, this is a big ocean to boil. We don't have to do that right now. I want to help people increase their courage to commit to move forward with confidence. And a lot of that is by just getting a simple win and making some progress, getting some wind in the sails, if you will. What's one thing, something small, that someone who is watching or listening can do next on their own journey of growth to integrate AI or large language models into their daily operations, and maybe just starting with their own personal daily workflow and not even thinking about organizational change at this point? What would be one small thing that they can do right now?
Sure. Next time you need to write a complicated email or a report, or a social media or blog post, um, as long as there's no proprietary data in it, run it through GPT, right? Make an account with OpenAI, turn off the data sharing, and then use that. Just ask it to copy edit, right, to make it more professional or expand on it or make it more concise, whatever you think needs to happen. Or even try feeding in the input email and ask, how should I respond this in order to accomplish whatever goal? And just by the process of doing that, even if in the end even if it takes you more time than just drafting the email would have, you'll have learned things about how the technology works, what it can do, how to work with it. And you may be really impressed by what it outputs. Or maybe you won't be, right? And you'll have discovered some of the limitations or ways that you need to work with it differently in order to get what you want out of it. But that's something that's small, easy, very low hanging fruit, and that, once you see the possibility there, it very easily scales into, okay, let's consider using this for more of our marketing copy, or those board reports that we have to generate, or those org-wide communications, or intranet updates. I know a few CMOs who for whatever reason own the intranet or the website, and you can use content generation, content review, check things for consistency, integrate new data into an old summary, right? So there's lots of very easy things that you can do using free tools that are very easily available. And I think seeing that possibility then communicates the value of this and shows you the sort of runway that exists, and makes you consider, if this is what we can get just with something totally out of the box, a free tool. For the customized tools, you mentioned Jasper. For content creation and marketing, there's also Canva for presentations. There's Tome AI and Gamma AI. I mean, any number, right? So those really have much more specialized. It's productizing the capabilities that you're seeing when you try that into specific use cases that have value for your enterprise at a more out of the box level, right? So it's showing that value, and it's starting your own sort of learning journey. And you may find that you end up using it a lot more.
And I think that's the key takeaway of all of this. It's to always be learning. And great point you mentioned too, when you're trying to experiment with some of these large language models and GPT platforms, it might take you quote unquote longer to do what you're looking to do, but that's part of the experimentation. And I know that being mindful and aware of, hey, I'm going into this to learn. It could be faster if I did it the old way, but over time, I'm going to gain back time by using this as a collaboration tool. The more that I learn how to use it, and being able to quote unquote hack time.